All right, so this is advanced setup number 3, overtime replacement policy. Here I'm just going to show you how to put in rules to generate an overtime call list. With the overtime replacement policy, it's really to ensure that all employees, are being offered overtime fairly. So after, talking with you guys, like I said, there's 2 ways to do it. We're going to be doing it where we have one generic list of all of our employees, and we are going to differentiate who we're looking for based on what we call overtime skill sets. So with that being said, the first thing we need to do is create these overtime skill sets. It's kind of similar to validation skill sets in that it's a skill set that you attach to someone that dictates what you count towards, right? But obviously validation, that's what you count towards validation-wise. This is going to tell the system what you count towards, for overtime. So an example of that would be, if I'm, say, a sergeant, I can count towards supervisor overtime, but maybe I can also count towards officer overtime if no one's available. So to create these skill sets, we're going to go to the administration menu, and we're going to go to List Center, and we want to find the screen Set Up Skill Sets. So within this screen, it's pretty much you just have to pop in a code and a description. Like everything else, a code is 5 characters long. Description is just, the name of that skill set, kind of spelled out. So as you can see, like in my list, I have an OIC skill set. I have a patrol skill set. I have a sergeant skill set. And I have an extra duty skill set, but you don't really need to worry about that. We're just going to be sticking with regular overtime for now. So these are really going to dictate, the type of work and the type of people that we need to fill this overtime. So, you might have patrol and supervisor, or, if you have, even if dispatchers, if you're trying to fill overtime for dispatchers, dispatch might be a skill set. Is everyone good so far with this, as far as skill sets go, what they mean, in terms of overtime? It's really just what type of overtime someone's capable of working. And these skill sets are also utilized in open shifts too. So if you're creating an open shift and you only want to offer it to, say, dispatchers, only the people with dispatch overtime skill sets are eligible to work it. So is everyone good so far with, putting in skill sets for overtime?
Josh, I'm good here. Just on the go-to training viewer, I'm seeing
I'm sorry.
There we go.
Okay, my apologies. So that's administration menu, list center, set up skill sets. All you need to do is put in a code and a description. You click save. Like I said, it's just the types of positions that, that can dictate overtime, who can work it, who's eligible to work a particular form of overtime.
Great.
Brenda, so far so good? I know you don't have a microphone. Well, this is the first thing as far as what we need to do for setup. Next, I'm going to show you how to actually assign these skill sets to our employees. So now we're going to go to the Employee Center, and we want to find the screen Overtime Selection Skill Sets. Now, this is one of those things where you kind of got to do it person by person. However, once you do it, you don't have to touch it again unless someone say they get promoted, and now they're getting another skill set attached to them. We want to go to this screen, and then under employees, you could, if you want to do it by skill set first. So here you would just find, say maybe all your officers. We select all, and then, these guys, they're going to apply to the patrol skill set. You'll notice here the list of skill sets that we created in that previous screen. So to tie someone to a skill set, you just have to have that skill set highlighted. And you'll notice when I click on it, to the bottom right, it says details for patrol. This is just a list of everyone who already has that skill set tied to them. But now if I click on someone's name, it'll say details for that employee, and it'll show the skill sets that they have. So if you want to see who has the patrol skill set, you can just click on patrol. Or if you want to see a specific employee and what they have, you can just click on their name. So to add, a skill set to someone, you just highlight the skill set, highlight their name. You do that just by clicking on it, and then clicking that green arrow. And then boom, it gets moved on to their name. And you don't need to click save or anything. It saves automatically. So you can just kind of go right down the list, add them. If you ever needed to take something away, you could just highlight it and click delete. And it's gone. Now, your employees can have obviously more than one skill set too. So, like I said, maybe if I'm a sergeant, I'm going to count towards the sergeant skill set, but maybe I can also work officer overtime. If you have a rule that says, listen, we got to call the officers first. If no one can take it, then we're going to call sergeants, things like that. So you can have employees both belonging to multiple overtime skill sets. So, for instance, let me just find, we'll get some sergeants on this list. So Kathy Lopez, sorry. Like here, Kathy Lopez, she has OIC, but we're also going to add patrol and sergeant to Kathy. So now when I click on her name, she belongs to all three skill sets. Meaning she can work all three types of overtime. Whereas, Craig, he only can work patrol. So far so good with as far as, assigning these skill sets to employees.
Yeah, Josh, one question. I noticed you have an extra duty skill set. Does that roll over to the extra duty module when you're filling the side jobs?
It does not. That's really for like if people aren't going to use the extra duty billing module and they just want to put in their jobs via open shifts. But I think it's easier just to use the module. But no, this won't carry over. That's something that you still need to do through extra duty.
Completely separate rotation setup then.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is if you wanted to handle extra duty through overtime. Like you're going to basically treat it like overtime. But if you're using the module, then you don't need to worry about doing it this way.
Understood.
All right. So once you get your people assigned to the skill sets, we need to create our list. This is going to be the list of, we're telling the system what people count towards, but we also need to tell the system, where their spot is on a list, what their placement is, things like that. So now we're going to be moving to the replacement policy menu under administration. We're going to open that up. And we're going to click on the first one, employee list. There we go. All right, so like I said, you can, if every position, say you had a patrol list, a sergeant list, you would have multiple lists here. If you have one kind of generic list, you might have something, like overtime. I'll delete this and we'll re-input that in. Okay, we're just going to start from scratch. So I'm going to click New, And so, Dave, you said you have a, department overtime. If you want to call your employee list department overtime, you can. So when you click new, you got to put in the name. We could just put in, something like department OT.
Okay.
I click OK, and now it gets added to the list. It's empty. So now to put people in it, we want to highlight it, and we want to click this button, Modify Employees. And now here you're just going to go through and select everyone, who is capable, or I'm sorry, not capable, but everyone who's on this list pretty much. So it's anyone that can work overtime at this point. Probably the easiest thing to do, if you want to do it by like groups or by title, you can do that. Or, you could just select all and then just maybe uncheck the people that don't belong on that list, whatever's fastest for you. So if I know the majority of my department, is going to work, overtime, I'm just going to do all and kind of go through and just uncheck the people that wouldn't be on this list. So, my clerks and, maybe my captain and things like that. SRO, they're good. So now I click Select and Close, and now here they are on the list. Once you get them on the list, and this is the most important part, you need to set a baseline for, the placement. Now, if you wanted to start from scratch, you said it goes by seniority as like the tiebreaker as far as, if it's not going by last worked.
And days off. Correct.
Okay. So, this screen is good to set like a baseline, right? It's your initial order of the list. It's the first order. Obviously, once people start working, their place on the list is going to change. This is just to get an initial placement for everyone. You can, set it by, alphabetically, hire date, seniority. Ultimately, these fields are self-explanatory, right? This is, the hire date, what their employee seniority is. However, sort is what we care about. A sort order number is really just your spot on the list. So if it's by seniority, say my seniority is, number 3, but I'm the most senior guy on the list, that means I'm first on the list. My sort order would be number 1. Now, if you want to mirror the list that you already have, well, then you need to go through and manually put in everyone's sort order. So, if you're going through your list and we'll pretend that, Jake is the last person on the list, well, then you would need to make him the highest number. And the first person on the list would be, number 1. So if you want to mirror the list you already have, you have to go through and manually put in everyone's kind of spot on the list. So if this guy's number, 2 on your list, you would put in number 2 for sort, and so on. But if you want to just kind of start from scratch, if you click on seniority, what it does is it reshuffles everyone, in ascending order. So from lowest number to highest number, which is, most senior to least senior. And then what we could do is we can click on this button, initialize sort to current order. What that's going to do is once we click on seniority, like I said, it reshuffles everyone from most senior to least senior. We can just tell the system, listen, what their placement is now is going to be their sort, order. So when I click initialize sort to current order, that's just going to mirror, everyone's sort to where they are on the list. So now, the most senior person is number 1. Number 4 is now number 2 on the list. Our, seniority guys by 5, they're 3 and 4. Everyone needs to have a sort order to show up when it comes time for a replacement policy. So I'd recommend, if you're doing it by seniority, click on seniority to get it in descending or ascending order, I should say. Initialize sort to current order and save. Now, if you ever needed to take someone off the list or add someone to the list, you could just find the list, click Modify Employees, and either check their name or uncheck their name. That's all you got to do. And, or, like I said before, if you wanted to mirror the list you already have, you would have to go through and manually put in everyone's sort number. And like we talked about before, the reason that we have one generic department overtime list is because we are going to have multiple rules that run against this one list, meaning if I work a supervisor overtime, my placement in general is going to move. So if I worked as a supervisor yesterday and I can work patrol today, I'm still going to be at the bottom of that list because I worked yesterday. So once you save, you're done with that, you can close. The next thing we need to do is put in our rules, but before we move on, is everyone good with the employee list and how what it means and how to set it up?
One quick question, Josh. If we set, I understand everyone needs a sort order, which could be, we could take, like, we're sorting right now technically by hand because the last worked, we're having trouble setting that up in the system. So we could enter our sort order based on our current list at the moment.
Okay.
Correct. Does that make sense? So regardless of seniority, the sort order could be different.
Yeah, so if seniority doesn't, if you're not going to use seniority right now, if you just, you would just manually put in the new, sort number for everyone.
So I just want to make sure the sort order won't take precedence prior to any rules.
No. So, and we'll get into that in the next screen. Pretty much, we set filters, and then we set sorters. The filters is what is going to tell us, like, maybe you have a rule that says you can't work more than 16 hours within a day, right? If working this overtime is going to put you over that hourly limit, well, then you're just not going to show up on the list. And then what happens is the system runs this list against those filters. It'll knock people out. Whoever remains then gets sorted. We would sort it by, we could sort it by the sort order, but your thing is if you work, you go to the bottom of the list, correct?
I'm sorry, if you work it, you go to the bottom of the list, yes.
We would have in our phone pad control, when someone accepts work, they go to the bottom of the list, which kind of mirrors last worked, right? So if I work today, I'm not going to be eligible to work overtime for a while until it goes through everyone, whether they work or they don't work, however your department does it. But pretty much you have to run through everyone else after me for me to show up again, which kind of mirrors last worked. So we'll you'll get a better understanding once we put in these rules. Brenda, are you okay as far as like following along? Is this making sense to you? Okay, I know it's tough without a microphone. All right, so after that, we're going to go to replacement policy rules. Now, because you guys are doing this by skill set, what we're going to need to do is create a set of rules based on the skill set. Meaning, because we're going to run rules against one list, we need a, say a patrol rule set, a supervisor rule set. And the rules can be the same. The only difference might be what skill set you have. So we're going to click New. We're going to start from scratch. I'll call this, Patrol OT, or if you want to call it, Patrol Department OT, you can do that. Leave the type as overtime. We click Next. And now we need to put in our filters. Now, like I said before, these filters, they're essentially looking to see if you should even show up on the list or not. If you fail any one of these rules, you're not going to show up on the list. So with that being said, we definitely want to have, where is it? Before I get into that, pretty much on the left here is a list of all available rules we can apply. And once we apply them, they show up on the right, and we can put in some settings, which you'll see in a second. And a lot of these are pretty self-explanatory. Right? Employees cannot be working more than X hours in Y days. Well, that's where we say, you can't work, say, more than 16 hours in one day. Or, employee must work an amount of hours before assignment or after an assignment. These are good for, like, holdovers. If I need to fill the midnight shift, I'm going to look at all the afternoon guys first and just hold one of them over. But for you guys, we want employee with a particular skill. Now I'm just going to drag and drop it over to the right. And now here's our rule. It's asking us, well, what skill? And here are those overtime skill sets. We're going to say patrol. So pretty much whenever we run this rule against our generic employee list, if you don't possess this skill set, well, you're not going to show up. So that's what we need at the minimum. Now, do you guys have any other rules that would be applied that maybe you want to see me put in so you have a better idea of how to do it for yourself?
Cannot work more than 16 hours in a row.
Okay. So we can do we can either use this or where is it? Employee cannot be working more than a specified amount of hours in a row. I drag and drop that over, saying maximum amount of consecutive hours you can work, 16. Mandatory break hours, 8. Right?
Yep.
We want to, use default work times unless, you have a lot of guys kind of all over the place. Say like my afternoon shift is from, 9 to 5, but maybe I have a bunch of early guys that work 8 to 4, maybe some late guys that work 10 to 6. If you want to do it just based on the default shift times, then check that box. If not, you want to do it by everyone's assigned times, then uncheck it. Now, okay, do you have any rules, maybe like if you're out sick, you can't work overtime for that shift?
Correct.
Do you have any other rules, like, not other rules, but do you have any, like, the same rule for any kind of other days?
More with the order. So people on days off are up first. People on a scheduled day off, like vacation, a scheduled day off, they're next, or they're after regular day off people. And then if you're working, you're at the bottom of the list. But I don't know if that goes in this rules area.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
That's more back to the rotation portion.
Yeah, so for you, we might need multiple sets of rules. Pretty much a rule that says, all right, we're going to look for, like, these same rules apply, but maybe you need to be on an RDO. Right? Correct. RDO guys get the first call?
Yep.
Okay, so let me just close out of this. Maybe instead of Patrol Department OT, we're going to call this, RDO, PTL, and I'm going to, once again, you got to be in patrol. Can't be working more than 16 hours without 8 hours of a break. And then employee must be on regular day off. So then after that, are there any other rules aside from the time off? Okay, you said you can't work overtime if you're out sick, right?
Correct.
All right. So then here we're going to say employee. Now, out sick if you're out sick like today, you can't work any shift today? Like, do you have any rule that says you can't work overtime until you work like a regular shift?
24 hours.
24, okay. So employee, actually, let's use, employee cannot be working if they have time off on the calendar day. Now, within this rule here, we can select specific, time off, so like sick, but if you have any like suspension or something like that, you can check that too.
Sure.
But now, like you notice, I didn't click on vacation or personal, so that means that those guys are still okay.
Yep.
Or actually, wait, we're already saying they must be on an RDO, so they're not going to be out sick. So we can cancel that. So for your first set of rules, RDO, PTL, that's fine. Now we want to move on to the sorter. And then we just want to do it by sort order priority from top to bottom, which is kind of the inverse of not the inverse, but it's mirroring how we set it up in the list. So it's going to go from top to bottom, top being sort order number 1, and then down. And then as a tiebreaker, we can use seniority, once again by ascending from most senior to least senior. And then we just click save. When we're done, we can close out. So here's our RDO patrol. Now, pretty much what that's going to do is it's going to apply those rules to that list first. But then you said after that, you look for RDO guys first, and then you look for scheduled days off guys, right?
Correct.
All right, so we're going to click new, and then we could do, maybe off PTL. Once again, employee with a particular skill set, patrol. So for you might have a decent amount of rules. If you have like patrol, supervisor, and then like another skill set, you're going to have pretty much 3 sets of rules per skill set, right? You have your RDO, you have your time off, and then it's everyone else, right?
Right.
So we're going to say patrol, and then we're going to say they must have time off. Oops, patrol, let's see, where is that? Employee must have time off during assignment. Now it's saying it's going to deny any employees if they don't have time off during the assignment. So now we're going to tell it, well, what types of time off? Vacation, personal, comp time. You're going to say you're going to tell the system what days off, someone must be on in order to show up.
Right.
And then we also want to throw in that other rule in here. Can't be working more than 16 hours without 8 hours of break. Now, as far as like order of the rules, it really doesn't matter because once you fail any of them, you're off the list. Right? So it doesn't matter what it looks at first, because if you don't, if you fail out of, say number 2, well, it's not even going to get to number 3 because it doesn't matter. You're out. We put in those rules. Once again, we go to sorter. We want to say by sort order, and then tiebreaker is going to be seniority. All right, we save that. We can close out. So then maybe we're going to do we can just call this one now, PTL, generic. Once again, so this is gonna be what we started doing. It's gonna be patrol, specified amount of hours in a row.
Now that checkbox, Josh, for include extra duty, that does pull hours worked in the extra duty module?
Yeah, yep. I should have mentioned that before. So that'll take into account if you're working an extra duty job, you're not going to show up on the list for overtime.
Great.
If those hours put you over. So then the next one we went through saying you have to be on an RDO, you have to have time off. So we don't want to call those people again, right? We just want to get everyone else who we didn't call.
Right.
Then we want to use a rule. Let's see. So maybe we're going to say deny anyone who has time off, meaning we don't want to see anyone who has time off because we probably already called them. And then we just want to specify the types of time off. We can just do all. So we're only going to see people who are working today.
Right.
So pretty much we have, we're going to run our rules that say anyone on RDO first. Call them up, no one answers, then we go to the next one, people on scheduled time off. No one says yes, we move to this one that says, all right, we called everyone who's off that day, now let's call everyone who isn't off that day with the same rules, the same other two rules. Then we want to go to sorter, same thing, sort order, then seniority is the tiebreaker. Click save. So then you're going to do this pretty much the same exact thing for your next skill set. All right, for this, I'll do, I did RDO, SGT. I'm not going to do everything again, but, you're going to do employee with skill set, sergeant. Where's that? Cannot be working more than 16 hours in a row. And then, employee must be on regular day off. Sorter, sort order, seniority, save. So you're going to, like I said, you really want to kind of mirror the rules, but you're going to have three different sets of rules for one skill set. One for your RDO, one for your scheduled time off, and then one for everyone else. Now, as far as implementing these rules, we do this through what we call replacement policy groups, which is the next thing we're going to get into. That's pretty much where we dictate, what rules do we want. This is where you kind of tie rules to employee lists. So we're going to say we want to run the RDO patrol against our department overtime list. Then we want to run the off patrol rule set against the employee list. And then, so you could have multiple, this is where we tell it, run this rule against these people first, then run this rule, then run the next rule. As far as replacement policy rules, it seemed like you were following along pretty good, but do you have any questions regarding, putting in rules?
I'm good here.
Brenda, what about you? I know we're kind of getting really specific here. Okay, great. All right, so now let's tell the system what set of rules we want to run for what groups of people. So now we're going to go to replacement policy groups. So now here we're going to click new. So now we want to say this is, and this is what you actually look at when you run the replacement policy. You select what replacement policy you want to use based on the replacement policy group. So this might be, you might just say, patrol. We say next, and now here's where we tell it what sets of rules to run against which employee list. So we're going to click add. Now here we would do, RDO first against our department OT list. And then we want to run our scheduled days off against the same list, and then we want to run, that everyone else set of rules against the same list. So now, based on this group, when we run our replacement policy, it's going to run this set of rules first against this list, so you're only going to see the patrol guys on regular days off, and if no one can work, once you move to the bottom of that list and you're on the last person, you say they can't work, then it kicks over to this set of rules, and it's going to kind of recreate that list using these rules against this list. And then if no one can work, then it goes to this last set where it's looking for everyone else. So you're going to generate 3 lists, essentially, or 3 call lists off of our generic department OT list.
Gotcha.
You click Save, and then we can close out. And then you're going to want to do the same thing for your supervisors or sergeants, however you do it. In my case, I'll do SGT. And then I'm going to do the same exact thing, except now, RDO sergeant against our department OT list. And then if I had the other rules, it would be, off sergeant against department OT, and then just our regular sergeant against department OT.
That makes sense.
All right, so then, after that, in your case where it's kind of going by last worked, we need to put in, rules that are going to move people, down in the list. So what you can do is, if you just go into the search area and just type in phone, it's called the phone pad control. This is where we put in, our actions. When we generate that call list and someone says they can work, it's going to be an accept. If they deny the work, it's going to be a denial. And then, everything gets stored. And you can run like a report at any time. If someone says, oh, I should have got the call, why didn't I, or whatever, you can run a report that says, why you didn't show up or anything like that. But this is pretty much how we want to save everything within the system. Because like I said, the replacement policy is really built on the principle of fairness. So, everything is tracked and saved and stored. You can refer back to it. But Dave, in your case, if you work, you go to the bottom of the list. So when I put in accepts, and then I put in accept again, and I make sure the action is they accepted the work, we want this checkbox on, send to end. What that's going to do is if you generate that call list and you call them up, hey, can you work? Yes. When you click accept next to their name, they're going to get sent to the bottom of that list.
Gotcha.
And that's how you can dictate based on last worked. So the person who most recently said accept, they're going to be at the very bottom, meaning, they're not going to get that call for a while. Now, if you called someone up and they said, no, I can't work it, then what happens?
If they say no, they go to the bottom of the list.
Well, so then for deny, you're going to also click send to end. Now, is there any case where someone's maybe like excused? Like, do you have like an excused option?
If we call, we leave a message, nothing happens to them.
Okay, so then maybe instead of excuse, you can just say something like left message. And then here you can, in log text, you could say left message. And then that action would be excused, and you would not check the box under send to end, meaning they stay right where they are. It just goes to the next person below them.
Great.
If you don't have to include a skip button. Some departments, they have some funky rules where you might need a skip button. But if you don't need it, then all you need is accept, deny, and then an excused or a left message, however you want to do it. Click save. And I mean, that's it as far as setting up the replacement policy. Now this is what I'm going to show you. I'm going to actually run it so you guys can see it in action. This is also this is getting involved with like the training of overtime replacement policy. But I think in order to best understand the setup, you got to see it in action. So in this case, patrol night shift, I'm going to run the replacement policy. I'm going to go to advanced rules, standard rules. It's not going to be used. A good rule of thumb, like I said, this is kind of getting into training, but it certainly doesn't hurt to know. If at any point, you find yourself filling out a whole bunch of information when it comes to running the replacement policy, you're doing it wrong. If you go to advanced rules, you'll notice that you don't really need to fill out anything besides telling the system what rule group you want to use. So if you ever find yourself running the replacement policy and you're asking yourself, okay, well, how many people do I need? And you find yourself putting in rules, you're doing it wrong. So go to advanced. We're good. Just select the overtime reason. I could just say staffing shortage. And now here's that rule group that we created. You have to determine what rule group. So in your case, it's either going to be patrol or supervisor or whatever other rule group you have. So I'll run it for patrol. I click find now. Now what it's doing is it's taking that list we created, and the first thing we're going to get is the RDO patrol rule ran against that list. So that's going to be the people that we see, and it's running a lot of rules right now, so it could take a couple of seconds. The first group of people we're going to see are only the patrol people who haven't worked more than 16 hours or haven't worked are not going to work more than 16 hours in a row. See right here, number 1, RDO rule set applied to the department overtime list. So these are people on a regular day off who have the patrol skill set and wouldn't work more than 16 consecutive hours. And here we have our buttons that we put in. So for instance, just to show you, deny. Now Kathy's at the bottom. I click deny again. Andre's at the bottom. I click deny. Bill's at the bottom. We didn't have anyone. It jumped right to Rule 3 because there was no one for Rule 2. But pretty much if there was, they would show up, or those people would show up on scheduled days off. But because there was no one who fit those rules, it goes right to everyone else.
Gotcha.
So now you kind of seen it in action. Do you guys have at least a better understanding of how the setup works within the how the rules and the groups are important when it comes to using the replacement policy? I guess what I'm asking is, does anyone have any questions regarding anything with the setup now that we've actually seen what we've built and we've seen it in action?
Josh, I do have one question, if you don't mind. So using the overtime replacement policy with respect to, I create an open shift for the same thing we just did, but I create the open shift. Now people have gone in, it's 1 or 2 of them, and signed up for an open shift. How do you apply the rules we just created in that scenario?
Okay, so when you go to the award open shift screen, you would just select use replacement policy, and then once again, you would just use the replacement policy. So if it's a patrol open shift, you would use the patrol replacement policy. Let me see if I have any in here. So like here, I have 2 people that signed up for a patrol open shift. I would just select use replacement policy. I want to use the advanced rules. And then it's asking, okay, well, what rule group? It's identical to when you just run the policy. It's asking what rule group you want to use. You would select patrol. You click run policy. And what that's going to do is it's going to reshuffle or possibly take people out of it's going to reshuffle the sign-up list pretty much. And if someone who signed up failed any one of those rules, well, then they get taken out of that list.
Gotcha.
And then from there, you would see, like now, apparently both of those people that signed up failed those rules, So we can't award those specific people. Pretty much whoever's left is who passed those rules, and the first person, it gets reshuffled, so the person on top would be the person who should get it first, and then so on.
Beautiful.
So if you have an open shift where you need, say, 2 people, 3 people signed up for it, you use the replacement policy, say they all pass, they're just going to get resorted. It would go to, this person. You would click award. Oops. You got to select whether or not, they're getting cash or comp, whatever, award, and then you would select the next person, number 2 on that list, and award it. Number 3, they're not going to get it because we only needed 2, and they were the bottom of that list.
Excellent.
But yeah, it's all doing the same thing. Whether or not, so open shifts are good for if you have that time to post the shift, let people sign up for it. That's good for like if you're going to be short next week. If you need someone to come in, say tonight, well, maybe you don't have enough time to post it and let people sign up. That's when you want to generate your call list.
Right.
Either way, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to run those rules that we tell it to, and if you fail one of those rules, you're not eligible to work it. You're not going to show up. But it's going to take care of, in your case, last worked. It's going to show you the person who hasn't worked in a while. It's going to, sort everyone based on, like I said, in the employee list, that sort is just to get a baseline.
Right.
And the more you run it, obviously that list is going to change. It's going to reshuffle based on what people are working. So, you can't cheat it, right? And once we put in those rules, we can't just pick willy-nilly who's going to get it. It has to, the replacement policy, like I said, it's not going to let you cheat. It's all based on fairness. So what you get is going to be correct because there's no way to cheat the system in any way. It's going to be 100% fair all of the time.
Perfect. That's excellent.
Great. So that was all I had for you today. So before we end the session, last call for questions, I guess. But I think this has been a really good session in that, you had questions and like Brenda said, a lot of these questions may apply to her department. But I think it was a very good session. And if you're good with it, you should have no problem putting in the rules and running it.
Absolutely. Just a quick question. I did one of these trainings the other day, and I got a thank you email and said the link, you can review the recording for about a week. That link wasn't in the email. Is there a way to...
I did see that. It's just a matter of processing the video. We have to process it through GoToTraining where it kind of like saves it as like an MP4, something like that. Once they get processed, we'll post it and you'll be notified.
All right, perfect.
All right.
I appreciate it, Josh. It was a great session.